we had another potential scenario. I mentioned in the intro that after we update an image in blob storage, we could publish an event from our own custom code on EventGrid and let EventGrid push that to the Logic app. The source of the event is then no longer the storage account, but our own custom code. Let's use that as an example to learn how to work with EventGrid from custom code. The first thing to do is set up such a topic. This is much like what we've done before, with the exception of the type of topic. It's not a system topic anymore, which is for built-in integration between Azure services, but a custom one. So, back on the portal, search for EventGrid, and let me add a custom event topic. I choose the Travel Inspiration Resource Group, and let's give our topic a name. Say appdev-evgt for EventGrid topic dash dev we image created or updated. The region is West Europe in my case. And let's click on networking. For the demo, we want to allow public access because the endpoint must be accessible from anywhere where we want to publish from. I'm going to leave firewall as is. I'm also going to enable a system assigned managed identity as we are used to by now. And I'm going to choose the cloud event schema here too. I'm not going to add any tags, so this should be it. Validation has succeeded. Let's click create. Deployment was successful. Let's have a look. Here is our EventGrid topic. No subscriptions have been found yet. We want to add one. And we already know how to do that. What we want to add here is a subscription that will ensure that the event is sent to our Logic app. So this is much like what we did in the previous demo. Let's give the subscription a name. appdev evgs for subscription here. dev we image created or updated processor. The schema is the cloud event schema. Topic type and source resource have been filled out. I am not going to add any specific filter here. We at the source will decide what to send when. But I do need to input the endpoint details. This is again a webhook pointing to the one we previously created for the Logic app. So let me open our Logic app again. And let's open it here. Go for the designer. And then in our when an HTTP request is received trigger, we can find the URL of the endpoint we want to call. So let me copy that. Let's paste it in here. All right. There we go. I am not going to add any additional filter or configure additional features or delivery properties now. Let's simply click create so we can continue with our custom code. And there we go. On to the code. Let's have a look at how this is currently implemented. This is coming straight from the Getting Started course, so it will probably be familiar if you followed that one. But if you haven't seen that, don't worry, this is easy enough to understand. When a put request is sent to destinations / destination ID / images, an update destination images command is sent via a mediator. The update destination images command contains a bit of information on the images that need to be updated, and we eventually end up, after the mediator has sent the request, in update destination images command handler. It's at this level that the integration with currently blob storage and queue storage happens. So the blob storage integration ensures that the images are created or updated. And then we also have integration with queue storage, which puts messages on the Azure storage queue, which can then later be picked up by other components. In the meantime, we already changed a few things around, as you know, so the storage queue part isn't necessary anymore. I can already get rid of that. There we go. All right, let's save this. And actually, let me get rid of the queue service client altogether. That's cleaner and easier to look at. All right, there we go. And that's looking fine. So what are we going to do now? we're no longer integrating with Azure Storage Queue, and we're also no longer using a blob storage trigger. So what we are going to do is, whenever a blob is created or updated, publish an event to our newly created topic for each image. The first thing we need for that is the azure.messaging.event-grid package. So let's open the NuGet dialog and look for it. azure.messaging.event-grid. Here it is. Let's install it. And there we go. What this package contains is a set of helper classes to integrate with EventGrid. One of those is the Cloud Event class. So in this codebase, we run through each of the images that are sent to this endpoint. What we want to do is trigger a new event for each of these. So at the end of this for each, I'm going to start by newing up a new cloud event. I want to pass through a few things here. The source, a type, and then any additional data we might want to send. According to the specification, which you can find via the link on screen, source identifies the context in which an event happened. It should be an identifier of type URI reference, and it often contains information like the type of the event source, the organization publishing the event, or the process that produced the event. Examples include unique URIs or app-specific identifiers. Let's go for that last one. So an app unique identifier, well, that is the image name. And I'm going to add a few prefixes here as well. These prefixes point to the URI the request was sent to. So destinations, the destination ID, images, and then the unique identifier of the image. So image to upload dot name. And I don't think I actually need this here. It's just the first one that's inputted. All right. The second thing we need to input here is the type. Type describes the type of the event. The format of this is producer defined. We are the producer, the sender, so we can choose this. But it should be prefixed with a reverse DNS name, of which the prefixed domain dictates the organization which defines the semantics of this event type. That is again us. So reverse DNS, that simply means a typical URI in reverse. Let's say com.ourcompany dot something we choose, say destination image updated. We also want to pass through additional data the Logic app needs to correctly process the event. So let's say we're going to pass through an object with the destination ID and name. That should be sufficient to find the image in the blob container. In case you're wondering, we could also send over the image bytes. But if you want to do that, keep in mind that the maximum size of a message is 1 megabyte. Referring to an image location in a container is thus a better approach. So I pass through an object with the blob name. So that's image to upload.name and the destination ID. This is of course a bit redundant as we already passed through the name and the destination ID via the source, but doing it like this makes it a bit easier for whatever is going to handle this to immediately get a hold of the correct values. Otherwise, it would have to start parsing parts of the source here. All right, with that, we've newed up our cloud event, but I want to add something extra. As a good practice, I'm also going to set the ID and the time. So I'm simply going to set the ID to a new identifier as a string and pass through the time. All right, let's save this. With that, we have an event we can send, but we still need some sort of component to send this. An event grid publisher client, to be exact, also coming from that package we just added. I could new this up here, but instead of doing that, I'm going to register it on our IOC container so we can inject it, which is a cleaner approach in my opinion. So let's open our service collection extensions. Oops, this one. Now let's register one with a factory for creation. To new this up, we seem to need a URI. That is the URI to the topic endpoint. We can find that on the topic overview blade on the Azure portal. So let's switch to that. This is our event grid topic. Here is the topic endpoint. Let me copy that and let's store it in our settings file. I'm going to store it in a new key value pair here, say event grid topic endpoint. Image created or updated. All right, let me paste that in. There we go. Let's save this. And now let me copy the key here to make sure I don't make a typo. And let's initialize this. I'm going to initialize this by newing up a URI from the configuration value we just added. And I'll just paste that in. And let's add a check for null here. All right, that's it for the URI. But we're not there yet. The second thing I need to pass through is an Azure credential. Well, we previously did that and it's actually newed up here. So I can simply pass through that credential. There we go. And let's save this. All right, now I should be able to inject this where we need it. So that is in our update destination images handler. Let's inject an event grid publisher client. And let's name it event grid publisher client and store it in a private field. There we go. Now let's use this to send the event. So let me scroll down again a bit. Right after I have created the image cloud event. Let's actually make this a bit better because it's not only updated. It can also be created. All right. So I use the event grid publisher client to send an event. Now let's give this a try locally. So I'm going to make sure that I set my API project as starter project. And then let's give that a try. It's up and running. Let's open the HTTP file. The request we want to send is the one on line 21 here. But let's check if the host address route is correct. Port 7293, if I'm not mistaken, that is the correct one. So let me send the request. A 500 internal server error. What's going on here? Let's have a look at the console output window.